As the 21st century advances, the threat of rising sea levels poses an increasingly urgent challenge to coastal cities worldwide. These urban centers are grappling with the stark reality of subsidence, land erosion, and the ever-encroaching ocean. The sinking of coastal cities is a multifaceted issue, driven by a combination of natural processes and human activities. This content delves into the causes, consequences, and potential solutions to this global problem, emphasizing the need for immediate and concerted action to safeguard the future of these vulnerable areas. Coastal cities have historically been hubs of economic activity, culture, and human settlement. Their strategic locations along waterways have facilitated trade, travel, and cultural exchange. However, many of these cities were built on precarious foundations, often on reclaimed land, marshes, or river deltas. Over time, the natural processes that originally supported these areas have been disrupted by human intervention. Venice, for example, was built on a series of islands in a lagoon. The city's foundation of wooden piles driven into the sediment has supported it for centuries. However, the extraction of groundwater and the natural compaction of the sediment have led to gradual subsidence. The rising waters of the Adriatic Sea now threaten to submerge this iconic city, and frequent flooding, known as aqua alta, has become a regular occurrence. Similarly, New Orleans faces severe subsidence issues. The city's location at the mouth of the Mississippi River made it a prime spot for trade and settlement. However, the very sediment that built up the delta and supported the city has been cut off by levees and dams designed to prevent flooding. As a result, the land is sinking, and the city is increasingly vulnerable to hurricanes and storm surges. The sinking of coastal cities can be attributed to several key factors, including natural subsidence, human-induced subsidence, and rising sea levels due to climate change. Natural subsidence occurs due to the compaction of loose, waterlogged sediments over time. This is common in river deltas and coastal plains, where layers of sediment accumulate and slowly compress under their own weight. Tectonic activity can also contribute to subsidence. Earthquakes and the shifting of tectonic plates can cause land to sink or shift, exacerbating the problem in already vulnerable areas. One of the most significant human-induced causes of subsidence is the extraction of groundwater. Cities like Jakarta and Mexico City have seen dramatic subsidence rates due to the overpumping of groundwater for industrial, agricultural, and domestic use. When water is removed from the ground, the soil compacts, leading to a decrease in land elevation. The construction of heavy buildings and infrastructure can also contribute to subsidence. The weight of these structures compresses the underlying soil, causing it to sink. The extraction of natural resources such as oil and gas can lead to subsidence. As these resources are removed from the ground, the land above can collapse or sink. Rising sea levels are driven by thermal expansion and the melting of ice caps. As global temperatures rise due to climate change, seawater warms and expands, contributing to rising sea levels. The melting of polar ice caps and glaciers adds vast amounts of water to the oceans. Climate change also leads to changes in weather patterns, including more intense storms and higher levels of precipitation. These changes can exacerbate flooding and erosion in coastal areas. The sinking of coastal cities has far-reaching consequences for the environment, infrastructure, economy, and human lives. Coastal and wetland ecosystems are particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels and subsidence. The loss of these habitats can lead to the decline of species that depend on them for survival. As sea levels rise, salt water can intrude into freshwater systems, contaminating drinking water supplies and agricultural lands. This can have severe implications for food security and public health. Frequent and severe flooding is one of the most immediate consequences of subsidence in coastal cities. Infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and buildings are at risk of damage or destruction during flood events. Coastal erosion can undermine the foundations of buildings and other structures, leading to their collapse. This can be particularly devastating in densely populated urban areas. Subsidence can damage sewer and drainage systems, leading to sewage overflows and contamination of water sources. The economic cost of property damage due to flooding and subsidence is substantial. Insurance claims, repairs, and rebuilding efforts can strain local and national economies. Many coastal cities rely heavily on tourism as a source of income. The threat of flooding and the loss of cultural heritage sites can deter tourists, impacting the local economy. Saltwater intrusion and flooding can render agricultural lands unusable, leading to crop failures and loss of livelihoods for farmers. Rising sea levels and subsidence can force communities to relocate, leading to displacement and loss of homes. This can create social and economic challenges for the affected populations. Flooding and contaminated water sources pose significant health risks, including waterborne diseases and exposure to hazardous materials. Jakarta is one of the fastest sinking cities in the world. Overpumping of groundwater has caused parts of the city to sink by up to 25 centimeters per year. The city is also prone to severe flooding during the rainy season, further exacerbating the problem. The Indonesian government has announced plans to move the capital to a new location on the island of Borneo to mitigate the risks associated with Jakarta's sinking. New York City faces the dual threats of rising sea levels and subsidence. The city's extensive waterfront and low-lying areas are particularly vulnerable to flooding during storms and high tides. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 highlighted the city's vulnerability, causing widespread damage and prompting efforts to enhance coastal defenses. Initiatives such as the Big U project aim to create a resilient waterfront to protect against future flooding. Venice's unique situation as a city built on water has made it particularly susceptible to subsidence and rising sea levels. The MOSE project, a series of mobile barriers designed to protect the city from high tides, has been implemented to address the problem. However, the project has faced delays and cost overruns, raising questions about its long-term effectiveness. Miami's flat topography and porous limestone bedrock make it especially vulnerable to sea level rise and subsidence. The city experiences frequent sunny day flooding, where high tides cause streets to flood even in the absence of rain. Miami has undertaken various initiatives to address the issue, including raising roads, installing pumps, and implementing stricter building codes. Addressing the sinking of coastal cities requires a multifaceted approach that combines engineering, environmental restoration, policy changes, and community engagement. Constructing seawalls and barriers can help protect coastal cities from storm surges and high tides. However, these structures can be costly and may only provide temporary relief. Improving drainage systems to manage excess water during heavy rainfall and high tides is essential. This can involve upgrading existing infrastructure and implementing innovative solutions such as permeable pavements and green roofs. Reintroducing sediment to delta areas can help counteract subsidence. Projects that mimic natural sediment deposition can rebuild land and restore ecosystems. Restoring wetlands can provide natural flood protection and enhance biodiversity. Wetlands act as natural sponges, absorbing excess water and reducing flood risks. Planting mangroves along coastlines can help stabilize sediment and protect against erosion. Mangroves also provide critical habitats for marine life and act as carbon sinks. Coral reefs can act as natural barriers, reducing the impact of waves and storm surges. Efforts to restore and protect coral reefs are essential for coastal resilience. Implementing zoning regulations that restrict development in vulnerable areas can reduce the risk of property damage and loss of life. Coastal setback zones can prevent construction too close to the shoreline. Developing comprehensive climate adaptation plans that address the long-term impacts of sea level rise and subsidence is crucial. These plans should include strategies for managed retreat, infrastructure upgrades, and community engagement. Policies that promote sustainable water use and reduce groundwater extraction can help mitigate subsidence. Incentives for water conservation and the use of alternative water sources are important. Efforts to combat the sinking of coastal cities must involve the communities that live there. Education and outreach programs can raise awareness of the issues and encourage residents to participate in mitigation efforts. Building resilience in coastal cities requires collaboration between governments, businesses, and residents. Public-private partnerships can leverage resources and expertise to implement effective solutions. While the challenges are significant, the potential for innovation and resilience in coastal cities is immense. By combining engineering solutions with environmental restoration, policy changes, and community engagement, it is possible to mitigate the impacts of subsidence and rising sea levels. The future of coastal cities depends on our ability to adapt and work together to address these pressing issues. As the world continues to warm and sea levels rise, the urgency of addressing the sinking of coastal cities cannot be overstated. The consequences of inaction are dire, but with concerted efforts and innovative solutions, we can build a more resilient future for these vital urban centers.